Okay, let's check and see that everything is working. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to go over the patch notes. The TFT patch notes aren't like properly public, but they were presented by Mortdog on his channel, so like I'm assuming that's just what's gonna go live on the patch. The patch is going to be on Wednesday, or I think no, I think Thursday. I think it's the 23rd. So the previous patch was just kind of like a micro patch. Uh, it's mostly numbers. This is more of the systems. There's some numbers too, but like this is where like actual like game like mechanic changes can occur, and there's gonna be a couple of those. So yeah, I'm gonna go through the patch notes, talk about that, talk about the new anomalies that are introduced in these patch notes, and then afterwards I have another presentation recording thing I want to do. I don't really know how that's gonna happen. I mean, it's just gonna be a recording. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to go over everything I want to talk about, but I'll figure it out when I get there. So I have this slides here, so we're just gonna go through it. Systems, PV rounds. Any PV round that drops to the same component will also drop a Reforger. This is really good in situations where you like in those ultra low roll situations where like you get two components that aren't usable in your comp. So if you're playing like AD and you get dropped 2 tiers, like sometimes it's just like actually unplayable. This happen like it's even worse when it's like really late. Like if it's on Raptors, like your final two components are just like two like unusable things. Like I mean, I guess in the tier situation you can make a blue buff for Caitlyn, but like you might not be playing Caitlyn in your whatever comp, so having a Reforger there is pretty nice, especially because Reforgers are a little hard to come by. So just any source of having more Reforgers is pretty nice. Even because even if you don't need the Reforger there, you'll have a Reforger in the future. So that's definitely pretty good, and it's especially good for, like I said, those low roll situations, which I believe is what this change was meant for. Augments. Uh, so this is for like augment tailoring. So the way augments work is that if you have certain certain trait breakpoints on your board, you're more likely to see certain things. So like if you have a certain amount of sentinels, you can see like a sentinel emblem and like shield bash and stuff like that. So I'm assuming they just make it harder to cater. I don't know if this is good or bad because having like that kind of tailoring is it's pretty nice. But if it's like, oh, you can get it if you want have 3 sentinel, you're more likely to get sentinel emblem. But if you have two, like you're fine. That I think then it's okay because in that instance you might not be like looking to play more than two anyway. So if you see the sentinel emblem but you only have two, then you were like it's kind of just a wasted augment because you weren't considering playing more. But if it's something like three and then you're looking to play four, like Like if you make that conscious decision and like you could still like have a good effect on what you get, then I think it's good. But if it's just like, oh, we just made it so that Sentinel emblem is less likely to appear if you have Sentinels, I think then might not be a good change. But we'll see. I mean, I don't remember what he said. These are just slides. So yeah, anomalies. You can't see them again too close together. So this is like to prevent that like A B situation where like you have like you re-roll and then you hit something and then you re-roll and then you re-roll again and then you get the first thing and you just like keep seeing the same things over and over again, like really in a really short span. I think the current system or like the new system is going to be if you re-roll an anomaly, you can't see it again for the next 12, which is much better. Yeah. And then Wandering Trainer Golem, uh, change the emblem distribution so that's you're gonna get one class and one trait, and then the other full random. I think this is good in situations where you get like three classes that you just don't synergize with each other. I mean, that's just what this change was for. That's what like that's what War Dog said. That's what like that's why they were going to do this. So, and I mean, it makes sense. This is a perfectly fine change. For the most part, this will just lower those low roll options. I don't know if this is going to affect any higher. I don't think off the top of my head there's like any high roll options that would like actually mess up. Like I'm trying to think of a situation where you would want three of each. Maybe I look at the traits that exist here. No, I can't really think of any. And then class again, I can't really think of any. Yeah, I feel like this is just a good change. I don't think there's any situation where this is gonna be bad. Because I feel like any situation where you get three of the same kind, it's probably not very good. Yep. Let's do it this way. Okay, traits. Experiment emblem nerfed. I think that's fine. If you had this emblem and you know what you're doing, you were 5 streaking for sure, and then maybe 10 streaking as well. Yeah, because like maybe less so in prismatic lobby, but in gold lobby, gold augment, where you just get the gold experiment emblem, you're basically getting +2 units, and +2 units is a pretty guaranteed win streak. So now they're a little less tanky. It's not like quite as much. I mean, it's more manageable, I think. I think it's not like gonna kill it at all. I think this is like it's still gonna be very strong. You're probably still gonna win streak, but there's gonna be like a little bit more difficulty, and I think that's fine. Sorcerer and Visionary, they remove the 8 pieces and then they move the 6 piece effect down and they nerfed it. I think that's fine. I think having to play 8 sorcerers or 8 visionaries are really hard. Like the only reason sorcerer is viable is just because they like turbo buff the numbers. But now I think design wise it is much better because you have these traits that are mostly backline. Like it's fine a bit when it's a frontline trait. Like you have like 8 duelists and that it wasn't always that bad. But when you have like a backline trait, like the problem is that like these each of these traits only have like two frontliners, so it's really really hard to play the trait without having no frontline. So they're lowering it. So now the cap is six. You can play six with or without an emblem, and I think that's pretty good. Also, these effects are actually pretty good. So like, you're gonna see these more often, and even though they're nerfed, like they're pretty strong. I think especially Visionary. I don't know what the Visionary board would be, or whether you'd need an emblem, but like six Visionary, it's a reasonable clap for Renata at the very least. Maybe we get back to. I mean, Black Rose I don't think was buffed yet. I mean, I'll check later, but I'll see if in the future slides. I don't think there was any changes to that. So I think this would mostly affect Renata. I don't know if there's gonna be another Visionary comp that would tap into this, but this is a very very powerful effect, especially in that comp because healing is more valuable on tanky units. Like tanky as in damage reduction slash armor magic resist, a little bit less so on flat health. But we'll be talking about that later in my little presentation recording thing. And then this is just damage reduction, which I mean that's also pretty good. A little bit more general, but definitely nice to have. I would imagine that the six. Let's look at what six sorcerer would probably look like. But you're gonna play these for sure. And then I think in just a standard game, it's gonna be like this, or like it's just one of the one costs. If you get emblem, you probably jump the one cost. Like the question is, like at least with Sork, we've been so used to playing eights because that's just what's the meta right now. I don't know how people are how uh desirable the emblem's gonna be. Like I guess with this and having an actual good unit, it's probably still gonna be nice. But I think I don't know if people are gonna like play the comp with or without the emblem, like, or whether the emblem's gonna be necessary to play the comp. Is what I mean. So you do this. Now you can actually fit more stuff. I don't know what you'd try to fit here. Can't fit Garen. Or maybe just is artillery playable? I mean, not or emissary. Like just this with emblem. This is what level 9. That's not bad with emblem. That could be a thing. Like this could just be a standard comp with if you have this and then without. I don't know, maybe you can get more Black Rose. I mean, this is like the same front line you would have normally. So like you and adding more Black Rose would just it would make it Silent Tank but you're just adding two more Black Liners, which is just kind of the same thing as the current situation. I can imagine there might be like a bruiser. Uh, I don't know. I don't actually know what you would add to the board. I might look into that later. How do I? Highlighting the visionaries. What did I click? I don't know. But speaking of visionaries, This one I would imagine you definitely need a emblem for. Okay, we have this ugly frontline situation. Like, it'd probably just be this. I'll be like visionary this. You don't have Watcher, but I think that's okay. You can, I guess, sack this. Play Nami. That doesn't look that bad. You can also maybe play Swain here. I mean, dominated doesn't even matter. Form swappers look a bit okay. I mean, I don't know how this isn't that tanky, I guess. It's not the worst. And if we have the damage reduction, it's probably fine. And okay, and then the Nami is just because her emissary bonus is basically a +1 rank to visionary. So you're basically getting the 8 visionary value anyway with Nami. Because the visionary stacks with Nami's emissary bonus. So you'd actually be getting what 80% extra. So it's like 3.6 additional mana instead of 2, which I mean it's kind of hard to quantify, but yeah, it's definitely pretty good. Yeah, I think this would also. I think you do need the emblem for sure. Definitely more so than with sorcerer, but I think this is probably going to be another thing that's going to be viable. And then family. This is the Easter egg, which they're finally making live and they're making it public. Cool. And I'm not going to spoil what that is if you haven't seen it, but we do already know what it is. You can people have done it on PB, so it's pretty cool. And it's definitely worth chasing if you have the means to do so. So yeah, but now it is now finally on the live patch after being teased for a while since Macau. One cost Lux finally mana locked. They talked about this change because of Lone Hero Lux, and I mean we haven't been seeing Lone Hero Lux because Lone Hero has been removed. Lux is still playable. You don't have to play like you can play her in the same setup. And I think that strategy, that comp, was more dependent on hitting Mage Armor than it was on hitting Lone Hero. I feel like it didn't really matter. Like you could force the comp without Lone Hero, but if you hit Mage Armor. But now with this change as well as them just removing Lone Hero, I feel like at least on Lux, it's not going to be viable. However, I'm not sure if they, because I don't think they did it to Renata, even though Renata can also do the same thing, even though she's like worse at it because her mana cost is higher. But and they also nerfed her shield last patch, so it probably wouldn't be that viable on that. But you could still have used Mage Armor on a lot of different units, like Vladimir, and also maybe Scar. I mean, I'll talk about that when we go to the Scar changes, but maybe. Next we have Morgana. They just buffed her for damage. She's still not a viable carry, so they're just gonna keep buffing her damage, I think. I don't think they want to touch other things. I think the other thing I'm not sure if it I remember seeing something somewhere. They might say it in like the bug fixes, if that's what that is. But what I heard from somewhere is that they removed the double stacking or debuff, which was a very niche but like actually like good strategy if you used it in the correct spot. Like basically her debuff stacked on itself, so if you had two Morganas, or if you had a Morgana that cast on the same thing, the buff would like multiply, or the debuff would multiply. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if they actually remove that or not. But that's what it is currently. And then Powder attack speed buff, AD nerf. The AD doesn't matter. It's just a compensation because they don't want her to do more damage without casting. They just want her to cast more often. So, I mean, that's fine. And then this is obviously a change targeted towards buffing backline and not frontline Powder. Because if you don't know, Powder is a very strong frontline because she gets mana from being hit, and then if you give her healing items, she heals the full anyway. So that like a lot of people were using that strategy as opposed to just putting her in the backline. But this is meant to buff backline Powder, which is how she was originally designed to be played. And we'll see. I think they made a couple changes, or it might be noticeably more viable on the next patch. Leona 3-star buff. I think this is fair. Uh, for a long time, Leona was clowned for being basically the same champion at 2-star and 3-star. Like, there's almost no reason you'd want to chase it because you're just getting like a Warmogs, which I mean is good, but like it's not worth the gold investment to seek out. But now you actually have like a little bit of value, and like this will actually make a difference. For comparison, this is what 3-star Singed was. For some reason, Riot made 3-star Singed scale 50, 50, 55, and then 60, 60, I think it was like 62 on 4-star. And then they designed Leona around 50, 50, 50, despite Singed being a 1 cost and Leona being a 2 cost. And then also Singed has the attack speed effect, which is a bit more valuable than the damage. I don't know why they made Leona a 2 cost and Singed a 1 cost, but now they're kind of tuning the numbers to make it make sense. So I think this is correct. And now Leona 3 is actually, I mean, with the previous change, I think Leona 3 is actually chaseable and like gonna be a decent tank. Urgot nerf. I mean, Urgot reroll is really strong. They want to target a place where he's a bit more vulnerable. His trait skills with health, so this actually is pretty impactful because it's a bit better to prioritize health than it is to prioritize armor magic resist. I think this change will make items like Titans a bit more valuable and like anomalies that give armor as opposed to like Sterex or something, or things that give health. It's going to be a small difference, but it'll be noticeable. You just, like I said, you're just going to have slightly higher prio on having more armor to make up for this. But otherwise, it's like not that big. I think Urgot will be fine. But like you will want a bit more focus on having some armor and magic resist. And then Vander buff. Very small buff on 2, and then a bit bigger on 3. I don't know if this was needed. I think Vander is definitely unpopular right now, but I don't think he's weak. And they're buffing him. They buff Powder, and then there's a couple other things that might make this be a problematic change, because this is a lot of stats. This also scales with magic resist, which I don't know. Like Vander's a champion that whose spell scales really well, so this I'm not sure if this is like enough to uh like offset what they did at the launch patch where they heavily nerfed him. But this is a step closer to that, where Titans BT Vander might be more playable because you will have a lot more resistances from having the AP from Titans and BT. And then just for normal tank Vander, it's like this isn't like a big change, a buff at all. But I'm saying for like this is a much bigger buff for Bruiser Vander, is what I'm trying to say. And they worked really hard to kill that, but they might have brought it back. 3 cost Loris further getting buffed. So I think with the Tactician's Trials tournament that just happened, people are starting to realize that Loris is pretty good. He's getting buffed more. I think Loris is going to be really good. Because, okay, it's like the way he currently looks, he's like really stable early. Like if you hit a Loris, uh, you're like he's just really good main tank. If you hit Loris 2 during stage 3, like he's also like really, really good. You could even play Loris main tank through stage 4 and probably be fine. And then maybe he would fall off a little bit later, but I think this buff very big. This reminds me of the buff that they made to Tarek. I mean, I think of Loris and like set 9 Tarek as one as a basically one and the same. And this is like the exact same change that made Tarek a Giga tank that was like just completely like dominant on the meta. So I'm a little worried that that is going to happen again. Yeah. Scar getting the heal buffed. Now, they're being very careful not to touch other things, and in most Scar setups, you will not... Like, this is just a small buff, and like to 3, it's not even like noticeable, but on 1 and 2, this will keep him a bit more stable. But, I mean, it's definitely an okay change. And like, most of the spell values in his stun anyway, so... And most of his healing is going to be in his Firelights rather than this actual ability anyway. But it's a little bit of a... It's nice early. I think this is another buff to Zeri comp. We had the Vander buff and we have this buff. And Zeri comp, people have started to notice that is also pretty good. There's also the Sentinel Zeri variant, which some people like more, but it's a little harder to play. It's a little like I don't know. But I think this is like fine change if they want to buff Scar. The other things that this I mean I don't think it's gonna be better than like Vladimir, but there might be a mage armor Scar build. I mean this doesn't change anything at 3, but it'll make him a little bit more healthy. And I think with Firelight, there might be something probably not. Like most likely like if anything is going to be the best, it'll probably be Vladimir just because he has the best synergy in traits, and his spell is a bit like more consistent and stuff like that. But I would look out for this. Garen AP buff, similar kind of change. Uh, most of Garen's shield value isn't in the AP part anyway, but this just makes AP slightly better on him. So I think this is perfectly fine. And this is like a very small buff, but like much needed because if you ended up with like a Crown Guard on Garen, it wasn't that good. Like you're literally only getting like 110 more HP from that shield. It's like not very crazy at all. And I think without like impact, like this is just to buff low roll Garen situations, like Garen items. So I think that's fine. And as a baseline, like you're getting 25 more level 1, 30 more level 2, like just without anything. I think that's fine. Like it's a very small, but it's an appreciated buff. Twitch nerf. The mana cost buff from the previous patch was obviously very impactful. Slight nerf to the... I mean, it's not a slight, but it's like a... It's a acceptable nerf to Twitch. I think he's going to be fine. I think this is just correct. I think Twitch will still be strong, but I think this is kind of needed because Twitch is a pretty good default line. I think more people are starting to realize that like Scrap is probably a better default line, but Twitch is still just a very fine unit on its own. I do think that with Scrap not getting nerfed and Twitch getting nerfed, we might be seeing a lot of Scrap in the next patch, but that's for Riot to deal with. And then Victor mini rework. He no longer shreds thunders, but he does more damage. And then he also does less percent HP damage. So this was supposed to be a buff. I don't know if this is a buff. This might be a nerf. Like he's got a 50% damage increase to the flat damage, but the flat damage was already very low. And you're massively gutting the percentage damage, which I don't think people realized was a much larger portion of the damage, considering how AP scaling worked. Because the AP scaled both parts. So if you look at this change, it's a 50% increase, but if you look at this change, this is like a third of the value. So I don't actually know if Victor is going to be stronger. This might just be a nerf, which I think people were going to be mostly happy with. However, I don't think Riot hit the mark that they wanted to, so I don't think they're going to be happy with it. But whatever, I think for the health of the game, Victor getting nerfed is fine. And then maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Victor with items is better. Like maybe he's getting buffed. I'm just not sure because like I said, I'm pretty sure this number change is just going to make him do less damage. And then obviously like his attack damage is gonna be more, but this isn't like a huge part of. Like it doesn't do enough to swing much. Radiant items, they're buffing some of the weaker ones. I think it's fine. I mean, I didn't pay attention to like which ones are good and which ones are bad, but I guess a lot of the flat damage ones were pretty bad, and so they're buffing those. I think that's fine. Augments, fire cell reworked, only on 3 costs or lower. Nerf to the situations where you get the 5 costs. If you have a shop where you don't have a 3 cost or lower, you get nothing. Which I think that part feels bad, but this augment was blatantly OP for a silver. So I think this is fine. And then this will only hurt the late game more than the early game. I mean, I think you can only get Fire Seal in 3-2 anyway, but I mean, it's fine. Like, I think this is fine. This is deserved. Last Cannon removed from 2-1. Last Cannon on 2-1 sucked, so that's why they're doing that. Rig Chop getting buffed. And this is the 3-2 version. I think that's fine, because you're missing out on a little bit from getting it early. And getting it early, you don't have that much money to roll anyway, so, or to buy the stuff that you're rolling. But now this makes me want to roll, or this will make it more for the comps that you'd want to play it in. So like, if there's a 3 cost that we roll that is viable, this will make it much more of a direction augment towards that. Spiritling buff. This I think is a pretty noticeable change. This is like 25% increase in healing because you're getting it 25% more frequent. And I think this augment was just slightly underpowered. I think now in comps that actually use it, which is just any comp that has a lot of frontline, this is going to be a very, very good augment. So I don't remember what the actual numbers on Spirit Link are, but I think it was like 5% plus 0.5 per 10 missing health, which was a good heal, but it just didn't proc like it wasn't frequent enough that like this wasn't that much healing in fights, but this increase in like you're just getting a lot more value from it. So in comps like Renata, or maybe a bruiser comp, or maybe a watcher comp, this will probably be very, very strong. I don't know about very, very strong, but it'll be strong. Survivor getting buffed. This augment is like it's just really hard to play around. They're buffing the number to make it like a high risk, high reward augment. So they're just hiring the reward. So I mean I guess that's fine. I think this is still like a very risky augment to take, but like the reward is a bit higher than it was before, so there might be if you recognize the situation to go for it, and I think it's fine. Trolling nerf, deserved. They're just undoing the buff that they did from last patch. They had no reason to buff trolling last patch when they already buffed Trundle. When trolling wasn't even weak before. Like, yeah, for some reason, last patch they buffed trolling and Trundle. So they're undoing one of those changes, and I think that's gonna be fine. I mean, this is like a much smaller part. I think the Trundle buff itself was probably more impactful to trolling being like really strong than this buff was. This is actually a very small buff, so as a result, this is just a very small nerf. But I mean, it's fine, I guess. Young Wallen free removed from 3-2, uh, and the gold is increased. So Young Wallen free was just broken on 3-2 because if you were in a spot where you would actually benefit from it, like if you were already 10 or 5 streaking, or I guess 6 streaking, and you're at 100 HP and you see this, you just take this and you get the thing you want from Carousel, like just for free. It's like if you had the spots where it was just blatantly OP, it was just blatantly OP. Whereas now you actually kind of have to like kind of risk whether you are going to be using it a lot or if like I don't know. The thing is, I don't think that this was. I mean, for a silver, like 5 gold is like not bad. So like for that purpose alone, it's like okay. But on 2-1, for instance, this augment was much weaker than it was on 3-2. So I think this is an okay change. Okay, Forbidden Magic. This is the Black Rose augment. This augment sucks. They're buffing it. I think that's fine. Now that now that Black Rose is not very strong, uh, like now Riot wanted to buff it because of that. I think that's fine. Uh, I don't know. I don't know how much this makes it. I mean, he's definitely getting more stacks. So I mean, this is gonna make Sion definitely do more damage, like a lot more damage for sure. I'm just not sure because I think like I just no one ever takes this augment, so I don't actually have an impression as to like whether this would be enough or not. But this is definitely a considerable buff because you're basically giving him 50% more stacks from this change, and you're making the stacks 33% more valuable, which is what like a 66% buff to the augment. I don't know if I did that correctly. No, I definitely did not. It's 1.5 times 1.33, which for some reason I can't do off the top of my head. They're basically doubling the strength of the augment. Like this is like, uh, yeah, they're basically. I think this doubles the strength of the augment, which I don't like. For how crazy of a buff that is, I don't know if that means it's going to be broken or not, or if it just was that weak that that just only takes it to like being viable. But yeah, that's just how that turns out. Forward thinking, this change is a little scary for one reason, and that's the turns required. So I think this is like a very misunderstood augment. I think it's actually like not bad. So okay, so I guess I'll talk about the changes and then I'll talk about what I think afterwards. Gold reward sped up makes it so that you get the I don't know like how much sped up, but like it took a long time to get all the gold you wanted. So uh, if you get it faster, that's good. That's good. Turns required. So you can only get this on 3-2. Uh, and then you'd only be able to get this gold back on 4-3, which was after most people had already done the roll downs and stuff, and it was also kind of an awkward turn to get the gold on. So now you're getting the gold on 4-2, which is a longer round because of the it's in augments, so you have more time to actually use the gold, and it's closer to when everyone is going to be rolling down. Like right now, since like the past couple sets, it's been like a 4-1 roll down meta, whereas before that, most people would roll down on 4-2. But at least now you're a lot closer to actually having like your board stable enough at a good enough point. And they nerfed the gold granted, but like the amount of gold granted was already like really high, and this isn't gonna like do this isn't gonna matter much. But the point is like realistically, what this augment does is you're gonna sack stage 3, and then you roll down, and you're pretty much guaranteed to hit your board on now 4-2. So I think this is like actually going to be a strong argument now. I'm not sure if other people can agree or not, but I do think this makes a very very considerable difference. Glass cannon same as the silver variant. I think that's fine. Gloves off buff. Um, so unlike the Trundle situation from last patch, the buff that they made to render this patch and then the buff to the hero augment, like those don't correlate because gloves off disables the armor and magic resist, so it's just a separate buff to Vander. That said, I think gloves off will be pretty strong. Like he's already like kind of okay, but this definitely buffs his main weakness, which is the fact that he's very slow to kill things. And like he's already one-shotting whatever he's hitting for the most part, so there's no reason to buff that, and they didn't do that. And instead they're buffing the parts that helps him just function better. So I think gloves off will definitely be a lot stronger. Rocket Caution buff. For some reason in the stats, this augment is bad. I don't really know why. I don't think this needs to be buffed. This is already a very, very strong augment. But I guess in their stats, this augment is not very good. Maybe it's because people like take it too often based on whether they should or not. But I think if you took this augment in the right spot, this is like already like really strong. So and they're buffing it. So now you're getting like 10% attack speed plus 2 collectors, which for a gold, that's pretty good when collectors are already one of the best artifacts in the game. And the trait that this uses it for is one of like two of the best users in the game in Corki and in Tristana. So I I feel like this is a case where Riot should ignore their stats and use common sense. But okay. Okay, Scavenger. Now grant that I'm tailored to the unit receiving instead of. Oh, okay. So instead of getting the an item from the unit you killed, you're getting an item that's good for you. Okay, this is actually so you're just getting so instead of getting like whatever random item that your opponent had, you're getting an item that's good on the unit like that's gonna receive it. So if you killed like their main tank and they had like a Warmog's Gargoyle Redemption or whatever, but the unit that has no item, like the unit that would be getting your thing, your item is like a Vi. Instead of getting one of those three items, you're just gonna get a good Vi item, like a Titans or something. So I think that's a pretty noticeable change. Like it's a pretty good buff. That said, Scavenger's like a win more augment, so your board already needs to be strong. It already needs to be getting those kills to like snowball faster, which it's not helping you like get those kills. It's just rewarding you for doing so. So it's still gonna be like a hard augment to use, but at least now it's like it's gonna be pretty good. I think in the right spot, it'll be pretty good. Because the worst is that when you get items, but like they're completely useless on the unit that's getting them, but this is not gonna happen anymore, so that should be fine. Shop glitch for removed from 3-2. Uh, I think that's fine. I think shop glitch on 3-2 was kind of a problem. Reunion nerf. I think this augment is strong not because of the traits, but just because of like it's easy to use. So like and both of the units are just really strong and can be played together really easily. So I think they don't have the traits, and I think it's fine. I feel like I feel like trait augments, some of them are like a bit misunderstood. People understand that some of them are really strong and then others are not that strong, but I think they're a bit better than people think. But I might talk about those in it, like the one like the ones I think are strong that people think aren't are. I'll talk about that another time. Sisters, so they're buffing it, but then they're also making it so that like I think the text. I think okay. So what happened was that the text said that it gave Vi the AD and Jinx the attack speed, but it actually was giving Vi the attack speed and Jinx the AD when they wanted it to do what the text said. So now it does what the text says. So now like you're not gonna like notice that it's gonna be different, but if you actually took the augments, like it was doing it just wrong, and now it's doing it right, and then they're also buffing it. So sure, trade sector buff. This augments. I think like he says in the video, this just got power corrupt, so they're giving it more gold. I think that's fine. Too much value removed from 3-2. I think I don't really know if this was like I think they removed it because it was too weak. And like it's super hard to but I think it was fine. I think if you knew how to play around it, it was good. I mean you could still do it on 2-1. And I mean I guess 2-1 is a better time to decide to play around something, but even on 3-2, I think there's spots where you can get like two for your like if you just play like the thing is you're getting a good amount of rerolls. So I don't think that's really something that should be because that like you could kind of treat it like a trade sector almost, and then if you use it optimally, you just power creep trade sector. So I don't think it was bad on 3-2, nor broken. I think it was just fine. I mean, whatever. Welcome to the playground buff because family is not very good right now. I think this is fine. I think that this is fine. I think they overreacted when they nerfed it, and they nerfed all the family units. So now that they're buffing, I mean they're buffing the family units and they're buffing this. I think that's fine. I feel like this didn't need to be nerfed in the first place. So I mean they're almost reverting it to, I think it was 14 seconds originally, so that's like almost there. And then they're buffing family again. I'm not like super worried about family. I mean, I think family's gonna be like more playable for sure. So, I mean, this is a further buff to that, but I think this is fine. Okay, probably the most problematic change in my opinion. Birthday present is getting 2 gold on level up. I don't remember what patch, what season it was, but there was a point in time where birthday present gave 1 gold on level up, and it was the most broken prismatic augments like in the game, or it's just the most broken augment in the game by far, just because like you can pretty much guarantee win streak everything, and you have so much more gold to roll, and you're guaranteed to hit your like a strong board early. Now they're making it 2 gold. In its current state, this augment is not very good. So I mean, buffing it makes sense, but this is kind of a lot. Maybe in the current like balance, it's nothing crazy, and that this is fine. But I think just based on history, this is very scary because the amount of tempo you get, like it's gonna be super easy to win streak, and you're gonna make better gold breakpoints. I think you can realistically hit level 6 on like 2-6 like consistently. You can, I don't know what you hit level 7 on, but yeah, I'm just worried about the change. Blazing Soul buff, I think it's fine. I don't think it was weak, but I mean the stats say it's weak apparently, so they're buffing it. There are some comps that can use this really well, like Visionaries. We'll see if that makes or breaks them. Coronation nerf, I think this is fine because remember Coronation was just like it's just the fawn prismatic. You're getting it for the fawn, and it also gives pretty good stats. They're nerfing the stats, so it's a bit more comparable to like a normal item. But I mean, this augment because the item itself was very good. I mean, maybe this makes more of a difference than I think because this was just a good item to put on any like damage dealer, and now it's like it's more comparable to a normal item. So slash actually it might be weaker than a normal item, so it might matter. Pandora's getting removed from 4-2. This is just the prismatic one. I mean, for the sake of rerolling the Radiance, I understand it, but I think that Pandora's can be pretty good. Like, I think it's fine. Because I mean, I guess, okay, with the other change, where you get the Reforger from duplicates, maybe it's not needed anymore, but I think in situations where you low roll your components and you need to fix your components, like this was really good to like save your game. So if that's not needed, then I guess removing it on 4-2 is fine. Because otherwise, yeah, it is pretty hard to use. You don't have a lot of time to reroll the Radiance item you want. It's just risky. Prismatic Pipeline. No longer Graham's prone to salute. I'm pretty sure this just makes the augment suck. So Prismatic Pipeline, like the way it works is you're sacking a certain amount of time. Like you're stacking like a couple rounds to get a prismatic orb, which on average is a bit better than like a normal prismatic augments. But the thing is, like, a big part of this being good was that the gold you like because the bonus loot for the most part I think which is like gold, if I'm not mistaken. Like I don't recall anything that were like part of the augments, but like not like or part of the like I don't. I'm pretty sure it just gave you gold, but the gold is actually really good for getting you like caught up. So I feel like now you have the trade-off, but the actual reward is much lower. Like I don't think prismatic orbs are like that much better than like a normal prismatic augment. And if you have to like actually sacrifice like potential health for to get this, like I feel like this is just not really takeable anymore. Like maybe it's still takeable on 2-1. On 3-2 it's definitely not takeable anymore. Like it was already like not that good, but now it's for like 100% not takeable on 3-2. On 2-1 it might be fine. But I think it's going to be on the weaker side now. Like especially considering like if you're comparing this to other prismatic augments, like you might be losing more health than you would in like another normal lobby. Quality over quantity nerf, I think it's fine. This augment's really strong. Uh, yeah, and it's a pretty big nerf too, honestly, because people figured out that you just put this on a frontliner and then this becomes OP. So that's a pretty good nerf to that. But I think it's deserved. Shopping spree buff. I think that this also needs it. This augment is not very good. That's just a flat buff. Like you're just getting more rerolls for free. I think that's fine. Sponging buff. This is actually a pretty noticeable buff. Just because there are some strategies that use this really, really well. I mean, I feel like sponging is still like a situation augment, but in those situations, this becomes like way stronger. So, I mean, I don't know that this. I mean, this probably needed to get buffs, but I don't think this way. I guess this like doesn't change the fact that this is a situational augment, so I guess it's fine. But basically, this augment is going to have higher highs, and then like in those niche situations, tactician's kitchen, tactician's shield is granted after 3-player combats. Okay, so this augment is really, really strong. So, because you get an extra unit and you get an extra trait. So now you don't get the extra units, for at least for a little bit. I think that's fine. Because you could also pretty easily win streak with this. Like if you hit the core of like like the early games like opener, like and you had this, like you were just really easily gonna win streak. So this is makes it a bit more of a sacrifice, considering this is already a really high cap uh augment. Because you get the +1 and you get an extra unit. Tomb Raider gives you an anvil when you take it, in addition to all the ones you get from the augments. I think this needed it. Tomb Raider is like a kind of like Sarai. It's like a high risk, high reward augment, but in a prismatic lobby, the risk is very high because you're sitting a long time without anything. So at least now you're gonna be a little more healthy, a little bit more healthy. And this can help snowball because early on, if you get a good item for your carry, this will. I mean, this is just good. Like you're closer to 3 items, and then 3 item carry or 3 item tank is really strong. What you really are. This is the Warwick augment. It was like actually like the worst possible thing, maybe in the history of the game that you could take. Into cousin double up. Like I think this is already like a really really bad augment on live, but on double up, uh, where people take half damage, like it was basically unclickable because this only worked on damage that you did. So you have to wait like literally like 10 rounds for a Warwick and a Bloodthirster. So now it's like I mean a bit better. I still think this is not very good, but I mean it's much farther away from how unclickable it was before. Okay, new anomalies. Is there anything else? Right. Okay, changes, anomaly changes. Okay, bug fixes. I just want to see. Okay, deep roots. Now, okay, so oh, okay. It says now specifies. Okay, I don't want to look at. Actually, I'll look at these because most of these aren't anomaly. But okay, deep roots now specifies it pulls into melee range as opposed to range. Well, that's not how it works. So I don't know what now specifies means when it doesn't always do that. Unless they mean that now it always does that. In which case, that's fine. But it doesn't always do that. So if it now specifies it, I really hope that means that it just now always does that. At least for the sake of consistency. Like I would understand that that's how that's gonna be, but I don't know if that's how that is. Hunger for power now specifies the ally must be adjacent to get consumed. See, okay, at least this is a case where like this is just clarity. This isn't like a bug fix. That's just like clarity, like a tooltip thing. I think that's fine. I think that's fine because like it's telling you what the correct thing is. Whereas at least in the deep roots example, I don't think that that's how that worked all the time. QSS now blocks stuns from dramatic entrance and Rennie. I think that's fine. I think that makes sense. Victor's cast is no longer paused by stuns. Okay. Headshots can no longer fizzle. That's pretty big. I think. I mean, okay, Caitlyn's already really strong, and that's a really big bug for us. I think Caitlyn's gonna be really, 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 really strong. I mean, okay, I assume no longer fizzle means that if it were to fizzle, she just gets another one, probably, because they fizzle if the target dies before she fires it. I would assume that means like either that or it just retargets onto something else, maybe. But either way, I think that's fine. Hextech crystals that are correctly attached to units. I didn't really notice that being a thing, but okay. I mean, if that was, then I think that's a good change, a good fix. Crest and Quick Checker, Crest and Around are mutually exclusive. Oh, I didn't know that they were not. But that's also because I didn't play much Quick Checker. But I mean, okay, that's just consistency. Uh, I mean, I don't even think like having +2 quick strikers like that's crazy. But sure. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be, so it's fine. Okay, the Morgana change. Okay, so it no longer stacks on multiple damage. Okay, like I understand that like it's like not probably not good, but it's just a niche situation that it's used. That I feel like even though it was like a bug, I would think it was fine to leave in the game because Morgana was like the most broken part about Morgana was that anyway in the niche situations where it was applicable. So I don't know. I mean, they buffed Morgana, but I feel like didn't really need to fix this because it wasn't that problematic. Execute longer bypass last stand and prismatic flash ripper. All right, I see they mean perfected flash ripper, and then last stand or last chance, like the anomaly. I think that's double typo. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty big because you were just down an anomaly or down a perfected radiant item or perfected chem baron item. If they like just have an execute, if they have like a collector or something, and I feel like that fit really bad in the situations where it applied. So if they fix that, that's really good. Flesh Ripper now always procs before last stand if you have both. I've never had both, so I don't know. But I mean, if that's how that works now, that's fine. Welcome to the Pentagon. Can no longer give members with emblems. Okay, that's a okay. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's fair. That's all I'm gonna say. I forgot that that was a thing, but it's like such a niche situation that like it wasn't really like a problem. But I mean, it makes sense. I'm not gonna complain about that because the alternative is kind of scary. If you just put it on a Warwick, for instance, you have all the rest of your things 3-starred. You should not be getting Warwicks for free or like anything for free. Okay, so the actual anomalies. I'll talk about balance changes first, and then I'll talk about the new anomalies. Okay, further buffs to Arcana Overwhelming. So at the start of the set, this anomaly was awful. Now it's at least like it's still not like very niche now, but at least it's like pretty takeable in those niche situations. If you have a lot of AP players in your lobby, like a lot of magic damage, like this is actually a pretty decent anomaly now because you're actually getting like a respectable amount of magic resist, and then you get a little bit of AP. There aren't that many units that like use this like for both, but now at least having 100 magic resist just flat on its own is pretty good. Most tanks use AP pretty well, so I think that's fine. Like for that, it's also pretty good. But it's like it's meant to be niche in that this should only be taken in cases where there's going to be a lot of magic damage. Defense Expert is getting buffed further again. I think this is like kind of hard to quantify. I think 90% is like a lot. I mean 75% is a lot too, but it's kind of hard to acquire to get more armor magic resist, and then when you already have a lot, getting more doesn't do a crazy amount. I think this is most applicable on like gargoyles, like solo frontline comps, which there are a couple of now. So I think that's pretty good. But the only other problem is that you're now comparing this, like I'm comparing this to Stone Skin, and I still think Stone Skin is just better in those situations. So, or even like Last Chance or something. So I don't actually know if this is going to be taken in the other situations where you just have maybe 6 Sentinel. Maybe this is takeable now, but I'm not even sure. Yeah, okay. If you have like gargoyles plus Renata plus like, well, not something. Okay, this might be take like I'd imagine this like surely now this anomaly is good. But the problem is like again in the situations where you take this, there are other anomalies that are probably better. So, but at least there's a bit more of a math situation now, which I will probably be talking about. Well, I will be talking about a little bit later. But maybe in that discussion, we can determine whether Defense Expert is good or not. Repulsor knockback range increased. So when I first saw this, I initially thought that they made it knockback further, in which case I was really happy and excited for that. But no, the change that they made it so that the range you have that you can knock back is increased, which is mostly a buff for ranged units, but like it's like a very negligible buff because it's not like in their attack range. And if they're going, for, like most units have a range of 4, so if they're going in a range of 3 or 2 anyway, like That like I feel like the cases where that actually matters is like super super little. No, they're just so few. And I'm pretty sure like even Mort said that like this is probably not even like a buff at all. Like it probably just doesn't do anything. And yeah, I'm pretty sure like with that it probably just doesn't do anything. What I want right to do is I want them to buff the knockback distance. That would be a good change. Like I feel like that would make it a bit more appropriate. I don't know if they're gonna do that. Titanic Strikes. I have absolutely zero idea why they're buffing this. I think most people don't know how strong this anomaly is, but basically Titanic Strikes, like people understand it does a TMS, but I don't think they realize that the bonus damage also applies to the main targets, meaning you're just getting like a 40% increase on auto attack damage to the main targets anyway, which is now 50%. And okay, this doesn't apply in like a lot of situations, like Twitch, for instance, it only applies to the main targets. Uh, and like there aren't that many units that would use this, but just mathematically, this is a very very strong anomaly. Also considering how this interacts with items and such, where it's like a separate multiplier, a completely different. Like I guess a comparison I would make would be to Corrupted Vamp Scepter, which multiplied with your other stats instead of just like being a different like a its own thing. It's not like it's 40 AD. It is another source of damage that is multiplied by 40% or like okay, 50% of your AD. And like there aren't that many units that use this, but this is like 100% a very very strong anomaly that 100% did not need to be buffed. And this is very concerning. Touch of Frost debuff duration buffed from 4 to 8. This is scary. Like, okay, I understand this maybe needed to be buffed just because it's like really niche and unpopular. I don't think like this anomaly was even bad at all, but I understand that why people didn't want to take it because it's really hard to observe the effects of it. But now you're just going to put this on a really good AoE unit, and you're gonna cripple the enemy. Like this is actually okay. I think both the Titanic Strikes buff and this like these are massive, massive buffs. Because if you find a unit that can apply it well and it hits a lot of units, like in an ideal scenario, like okay, if you have like a war like a Victor, for instance, he casts the enemy team like just permanently has 20% reduced attack speed plus the stun effect. Like I think this was balanced around the stun effect, but that's like not even that reliable part of the anomaly. Just the fact that you're chilling for now 8 seconds is going to be ridiculous. I'm very concerned about this change. I don't know how many. Okay, off the top of my head, I think like Caitlyn, really, really good user of it. I still need to investigate whether this. I don't think this works on Twitch. If it does work on Twitch, it would be completely broken on him. So look out for that. I guess it's kind of a bit hard to hit backline. So like maybe Zoe or something. Like it might be takeable on like some stuff. I guess it is pretty hard to hit enough backliners. Maybe I mean it may be like an Elise. I guess you can kind of reliably hit the backline and then almost permanently cripple them. But yeah, these two changes are going to be problematic, I think. Wolf Familiar's getting buffed. I think this one, Tsunami is like secretly takeable. I don't think it's OP, but I think it's secretly takeable in a similar manner to how Center of the Universe, with its small buff, people have suddenly realized that it's OP on ranged, even though I've been saying that it's been good on ranged for a long time. Uh, but maybe this will do the same thing where people will realize that this is actually takeable. Mathematically, you get two wolves. Uh, so this is 150% AD uh times like I think like 1.0 attack or like 0.95 attack speed. It's just another source of auto attack damage, but it interacts with traits and stuff. And AD units that have a lot of AD are really good with this. Uh, yeah, like there's a lot of interactions. I think that I saw on the little doc video this works with Silvermere Dawn and Horizon Focus, which is a disgusting combo, though very very situational and hard to get. But I think like if people are willing, I mean, they're gonna keep buffing it until people start taking it. I think the problem is just that people don't take it because they think it's bad. But I think this should help a lot because it's definitely pretty good damage. Okay, so the new ones I already reviewed some of these, but like I'll talk about them because I'm not sure if they were. I wasn't sure they're gonna make changes or not. And some stuff was like bugged, and some stuff was like iffy or whatever. So, all right. So, brutal claws. It's a new crit anomaly. Uh, they gain 40% crits, and the crits now bleed for 100%, or no, 40% of their magic damage over 3 seconds. There's a couple things to understand about this as to why I think this is a very good anomaly. One is that our base crit chance is 25%. If you have Infinity Edge or Jeweled Gauntlet, that brings you to 60%. So with 40% crit strike chance, you're now at 100%. There are a lot of units that are willing to take just the Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet, but not necessarily go further into crit, just because they can't really, they need other stuff. So obviously, if you have like a guard breaker, like a QSS in your build, or like a Last Whisper, like you can stack more. But a lot of units were okay with not doing that. Some examples are like Twitch. Uh, QSS is pretty good on him, but if you like, a lot of people just go like, you can use Infinity Edge plus one plus whatever. It's not necessarily going to be a crit item, so this will take him to 100% crit anyway, and then you get the bleed like 100% of the time. Another example could be like Zoe or like Silco or like any of the users that have like important core items and then they just want some kind of multiplier. So sorcerers like having crits because they have a lot of AP already. So in Dominators the same thing. So like you in Silco you normally see like Nashers, a Shojin, and then like a Jeweled Gauntlet for instance. In that situation, you now are at 100% crit. Zoe would be like Shojin plus like some attack speed item, plus like Jeweled Gauntlets or like maybe like an Archangel or something because she's not like in Rebel. It's not a lot of AP. In the Sorcerer, it is quite a lot. So you're gonna lean more towards crit anyway, which I will talk about later. But there's a lot of the point is there's a lot of situations where this brings you to 100% crits, and then you get the effect. And okay, getting more crit strike chances alone is pretty impactful because the way crit works, the base crit damage is 140, so you can kind of treat crit chance as bonus damage, where every 20% crit is like 8% bonus damage. So if you have a 100% crit strike chance, you basically have 40% bonus damage. Because you have 100% chance to do 40% additional damage. Because that's the base crit. Like, if you have like more crit damage, the bonus damage is and like the math is a bit higher. But okay, so with IE alone, normally that's just a 24% damage increase because you have a 60% chance to do 40% more damage. So, like mathematically, this is like a 16% damage increase, assuming you can crit on your ability. If not, this is a 16% damage increase to your auto attacks, which for I guess for a lot of units that doesn't matter. But in a situation where you can make your ability crit, this makes it so that you go from 24% bonus damage to 40. That's pretty big. But another huge aspect of this anomaly is the bleed damage. So bleed is like a bit of a misunderstood stat, or not stat, like trait or effect, like status effect. It's not a stat, not a status, it's just like effect in the game. Another comparable effect is the Zyra experiment bonus that does 50% bleed damage, like true damage, I think over 2 or 3 seconds. The way you want to think about bleed is this is damage that is accessible after a certain amount of time. So you want this to be used on more consistent sources of damage as opposed to burst. What I mean is if you have a Jinx rocket, like the third cast, she ults and she hits the whole board. She's not getting bonus damage on the units that she one-shots anyway, but the units that aren't going to be one-shot are getting a huge like damage increase. So in total, the amount of damage bonus damage you're getting, depends on how many cases where you're not overkilling. If you're overkilling, you're not bleeding, and if you're not bleeding, you're not doing more damage. And it's not that if you overkill, it's bad. It's not that like bleed. It's not like you want them to live longer. But the point is that like bleed does more damage. Like it is a greater damage increase on sources on like situations where you are not like you're not wasting the bleed. So if you have a situation where you can either do 1000 damage in one instance or like 100 damage per second over like a period of time, or like I don't know, something that's like equivalent where there's like a trade-off. I guess a better comparison would be like a caster versus like a consistent DPS. You have an auto attack champion like Kog'Maw versus someone that has a really strong ability like Lux. How many auto attacks does it take to match one Lux cast, and how frequently are those happening? You would want it on the Kog'Maw for the reason that while you are building up the damage, you're already getting the bleed. Whereas if you're getting all the damage on your burst, you're not necessarily getting the bleed. So like there's just basically more bleed uptime, and the more bleed uptime, the more total bonus damage the crit is, like the bleed is doing. So I know that's like really convoluted and complicated, but the applications you want to the best use this for is on not overkill instances of damages. More specifically, it's really, really good on chip damage. So, like I previously mentioned, Zoe, Twitch are going to be some really, really good users because Zoe and Twitch can constantly chip backline, but they're not going to kill. So you're guaranteed to get the full bonus damage of the bleed, which matters. You're basically getting 40% bonus damage plus the extra from the crit chance. And it makes them do those things like much, much better than they would otherwise. Whereas in the case of Jinx, for instance, if you don't kill, yeah, you're probably with the bleed, you're probably going to kill, and that's already like a huge like thing. But the amount of bonus damage that the bleed is doing for Jinx is lower than what it would be for Zoe or Twitch. I mean, either way, it is going to be really strong because, I mean, it'll give, like, Jinx crit, and then it's definitely going to be very strong on Jinx too. But the way you use it is, it's less of a percentage damage increase for her than it would be for, Zoe Twitch. And then other instances of, similar things. Like other examples, like Nami, Swain, Corky, whatever. I mean, okay, the other example I'll say is like Zyra, because her bleed works the same way. Only okay, this one is adaptive damage, but Zyra's is true damage. But it's the same thing. Whereas if Zyra is going to kill anyway, then the bleed doesn't do anything. But like if she's like doing more damage over a more consistent period of time, you're getting more bonus damage. So even though like you want to kind of like balance things out, getting it's basically more valuable on attack speed than it is on flat damage. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But yeah, this is point is the other thing is that on PBE this wasn't working on ability damage. I'm assuming that is fixed. Uh, in which case it's very good. If it's not fixed, then this anomaly will be really bad. But I am assuming that it now works on abilities like it should, logically. So, yeah. I'm okay. Cultivating magic. Cultivating magic. This is it'd be similar to power up, but it's like okay. Gain AP and then gain more for each 10,000 damage dealt. I think this and power up, which is the same thing, but for AD, a little lower, but like it's fine. I think these are gonna be very strong. Uh, like in solo, like in main carry instances, this is gonna be really strong. There's a lot of units that can easily do this, and this can add up to a lot really quickly. The first example I think of is like Caitlyn for power up because she just randomly does a ton of damage. But then like if you think about it, really like any like carry can do that. Like if I think Caitlyn, then you can also think of Twitch. Uh, any unit that's just doing a lot of damage on like the damage charts is gonna be good. If you fight like a bruiser lobby or something, or a bruiser ward where they just have a lot of health, that could be a way to cheese more damage. Or if they have like a super tank, and like you end up with like a situation where your main carry does like 20 or 30,000 damage just because the amount of health the enemy tank has, you can kind of choose more damage. But there's just a lot of like most boards where you want bonus AP or AD, and they have like a main carry. This is gonna be good, and I'll talk about it later. But like if you have like sorcerers or dominators, for instance, or if you're like artillerist, like or like something where you already have a lot of AP or AD, it's a little bit less valuable, but it can still be very good just because the cap can be really high. Like if you were to compare it to like 30% like damage amp, maybe in some situations you'd want the damage amp, but if you were to get to like 70, 80 AP versus like 30% damage amp, there might be an argument for taking the AP just because of how high the number is. I guess a similar comparison was like the faded for like the Syndra bonus versus the Ari bonus in set 11, where at some point the number is just going to be so high that you just want the flat AP or the flat AD. But yeah, I think these are going to be very strong. Yeah, assuming you can get to a point where you stack them up. If you just recognize a good spot for it, these are pretty safe to take, and they're going to be really good. And I want to compare these to Headhunter, which is similar, in that you get permanently stacking attack speed, except I think Headhunter requires that you get the kill, whereas this requires you do damage. And I think it's much easier to do damage than it is to get the kills, because even if you have more attack speed, you're not necessarily guaranteeing that you're getting the kills. Whereas if you have more AP and AD and like to do damage, like having more stats, stack, stacks, whatever. I mean, both are technically. Like having more makes it easier to do more damage. So if you're getting more AP, then it's easier to do more damage. I mean, the other thing you're limited by is just the amount of health that your opponents have. So there's a bit to that. Okay, so next one is cybernetic empowerment. They changed the name, but I mean, it's the same thing. So, cybernetic empowerment gives attack speed and then more attack speed for each component held by a team. I think I don't remember what the numbers were before, but I think they nerfed it. I think. I mean, even before, I don't think it was that crazy, but now it's like you need to be like in a really good spot for it, because otherwise it's not that good. Attack speed is like decent, but it takes a while to get to a point where this is like better than other attack speed anomalies. By the time you get this, you will have like what, 14 components. So 14 times 2 plus 8, 36. So you'll probably start out with like 36, but if you get like bonus items from like scrap or from augments or from the portal, this can be really good. This also scales a little bit into the game. It scales less than like Headhunter, for instance, if you can optimize getting kills. But in just like a really high cap like situation, if you're playing on like Warwick or you're playing on Savika Portal, or like loot subscription, or if you're playing like Scrap, where you can like get a lot of components, then this is gonna be more valuable. Overall, I think this is like a bit. It's still gonna be a bit weak. It has like high roll opportunity, but in most situations, it's gonna be like pretty standard to like slightly below average. Hive mind, this is interesting. If you saw the YouTube videos where people were getting like one, like all the 3-star 6 costs, but then also like all these like dragons and raptors and stuff. This was because of this anomaly. Because the way it was coded, it I guess they I didn't account for the fact that you couldn't kill uh PvE monsters. So yeah, and assuming that's fixed, but I mean it's his first champion, so I don't know if he's had like first unit before. I'm assuming they fixed it, but either way, this is a damage amp anomaly plus an econ anomaly, and that's about it. The value can be like increased if this helps you get to upgraded units that you otherwise would not hit. In that case, that's incredibly valuable, but that's probably gonna be pretty rare. I think in most situations you could just treat this like money. It's just econ. It's 25% damage amp plus econ, which I think like that. It's also just pretty good. I think that's just really good. Just to have more money, especially later on in the game. It's probably you're probably gonna kill like a 4 cost most realistically. Depending on the positioning, maybe they have like a trait bot that you kill, which is a bit unfortunate. But if you uh can consistently get a good amount of money, this can help you go level 9, level 10. Uh, and that value is like incredibly powerful. Not to mention that like 25% damage amp is pretty good. Like it's not like crazy. Other can do more, but it's pretty safe. Like it's has the same characteristic of comeback story, which I consider to be one of the best anomalies in the game, in that you could take this in any situation on your main carry and you're fine. This is the same thing in that it's not like a niche situation like Force of Friendship or like uh, Avarice Incarnates or bully, where you have to already have a certain comp for it to be valuable. Like this, you could take in any comp and you'll be fine. Uh, it doesn't have the damage camp, the damage ceiling that Combat Story has, or you're gonna be at 10 HP or something at some point in the game, probably. So you're guaranteed to get a point in time where you get like high damage amp. I mean, you don't have like that kind of situation, but you will have a situation where you want money, and 25% flat, like just baseline, is pretty good. So I think that's fine. Infectious Anomaly, this one has been like a bit weird for a while. So the way this works is it's it you put it on your unit and then uh at the start of each round it jumps around and it applies itself to a different ally or the same it just a random ally and then it spreads across your board and then if your unit already has it they get a little bit bonus stats instead of like this. So it can once your whole board has it you're just getting a bit more stats randomly. A couple things to note is that the when you spread it, the unit that you spread it to can also spread it. So at the first round you'll have one, and then you'll have two, and then you'll have like four, maybe, and then it'll go until all your units have it. So it spreads a lot. It was initially unclear as to whether that was intended or not. Because I was told that that was not intended and that was a bug and that was going to be removed. But if they removed it, then this anomaly would be absolutely terrible. So instead of removing it, I think they just nerfed this, which I mean, if they didn't nerf it, it would be very strong. If it, with this, it's still quite strong. Like you're getting essentially this on your whole board plus some random combination of this. Hopefully on a good unit. But you could basically get like a good amount of stats for your whole board. Like it's like a silver stand united, maybe a gold stand united. Like augment, if you remember what that is. And that I mean, if you do remember what that is, that's pretty powerful. I think this is still going to be a very strong anomaly now. I think this is not gonna be one that you would take if you're like low because this needs to scale. Like this needs to like there are scaling anomalies and then there's some that like need to scale, and this is one of them. And I guess this is also another one. Like this is one, but the base value is pretty low. But like once your whole board has it and they're getting AP and AD, and this is gonna be very strong. And there's a lot of comps I can use as well. So. Another thing, which I don't actually know if it's how it works, but it would be pretty good if it did, is that you might not need to keep the unit that you put it on. Because I think, like in theory, if it were to spread to allies, like you could pivot out of the unit that you anomalied, because like your other units on your board have it. I don't know if that's how it actually works, and I also don't know if you would choose to put this anomaly on a unit that you want to pivot out of anyway. But if you wanted to do that, I think that might be possible, where you can pivot out of it. In which case, that'd be pretty interesting. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you, like, put this on a Vi, and then you, like, later remove the Vi on your board, and you just don't have her, but the anomaly still like is spreading across your board, doing its thing, but you just never like play the Vi again because you just I don't know you just don't want it. Like if it works that way, that'd be pretty interesting. It's not even that crazy, but it is like interesting. Titan of Teamwork. This is like a Force of Friendship kind of, but for durability. I think In most situations, this one is a bit underpowered, but there are going to be a couple situations where this is going to be very strong. The examples I think of are specifically in Renata, for whoever you choose the main tank, and for like family, where you're like these are just two instances where you're gonna have a lot of one costs. So like you're gonna have a lot of. It's very easy to 3-star a lot of units, so it's you're gonna get more value from this. I think you need to have a lot of 3 stars for this to be good, but I don't know if there's I don't think there's any other durability anomalies, so that's another way to access durability. And then you have some worrying things in that Sentinel already provides a lot of defensive value, but durability is just something that most of these units don't have access to. I think in Renata now, most people are gonna main tank Rel, so Rel doesn't have any durability. So giving her access to that would be really, really powerful. And then the other instance would be family. There's different family comps to consider. Like it's not just Pit Fighter. Like I think that's the one that people are gonna think of now. But what I'm more concerned of is that with the Vander buffs, uh, you might have a situation where Watcher family is viable. Uh, because Vander gets more armor from his buff, and then family gives durability, and Watcher gives durability, and then if this now also gives more durability, I mean maybe this is better than like something that gives like a different stat, but like the point is you can in theory stack to a lot of damage reduction on that, and then you might have like an unkillable Vander, or maybe like an unkill like you could put this on like Violet and just play Pit Fighter family, and then that would also be pretty good. But yeah, but my point is, I'm worried about the ceiling of this anomaly because it might be another mage armor situation where like in most cases it's not like crazy slash. I mean, in this one, I think in most cases it's going to be underpowered. At least with mage armor, the baseline is already like pretty decent, but the ceiling is like going to be ridiculous. Uh, because like the ceiling for mage armor is absolutely ridiculous, and then for here, it might be similar, maybe not quite the same, but similar. Vampiric Affinity, uh, 20% Omni Vamp, and then increased one below 75% health. They changed the numbers to this to I think match like Berserker Rage, which I think it's fine. Like this was a bit weak when it was on PPE, and they buffed it a bit. So now I think this is an okay number. This is an okay number. Uh, Omnivamp is like a bit weird in that I think if the unit wants Omnivamp, you're most likely going to build items to get it anyways. So I don't know how necessary this anomaly is going to be because it's like such an important stat that you are going to prioritize it anyways. Maybe there's going to be like cases where like you just want more, and in case that's probably fine. But I don't know how many situations that's going to be where you actually want more. Like, and I think in most cases where you like want any at all, you would have already planned around that. So I don't know. I feel like numbers wise, this is a bit better than it was before, but I still think there aren't going to be that many situations where you'd actually want this or need this. I don't know. I think it's fine, I guess. I'm pretty indifferent towards this one. The last one is Voracious Appetite, which just turns into set set 12 Briar, pretty much, where you just have you can feed your thing, your units. Like you get this amount base, and then you get a consumable, and you can feed them more in exchange for player health. There's a couple comps that could use this well. Mostly pit fighters. I think of like Urgot, for instance, but there's a couple others. You can put this on maybe like Vi or like maybe Mordekaiser or something, and you can also feed that. There's like this because any like bruiserish type of units would want this. It only takes 5 feedings to get to. Uh, actually, wait. I don't know what they changed this number to, but I don't remember what the number was before. But the point is, if you have health to spare, like if you're snowballing and you have a unit that can use this well, then this anomaly is very very strong. And if you don't, then you also shouldn't. If you don't have health to spare, you shouldn't take this. But this has a really like high potential to be very strong in the situations that are appropriate. Because you can eventually have like giant size and value, but you also have a ton of damage imp. So yeah, that's everything. So okay, that is that. I'm going to go to the bathroom and then I'm going to come back. Okay. Okay, so I don't know how to format this next part. This is kind of just me recording for something I want to make. But I'm sorry, I'm catching a bit of a cold, so maybe I'm sniffling a bit. But what I want to do, what I wanted to do, the main point of the stream, which I've kind of been putting off because I have been busy and stressed, but I want to make, uh, I want to talk about how it is determined whether items are good on certain units. Talk about the math behind choosing what items to put on units, and yeah, just how stats work in general. Like, and by stats I mean like item, like combat stats, not uh like these stats. So, here's all notepad. All right. Units scale with stats. With more stats, your unit is going to do more damage. To acquire stats, there are many different ways you can do so. You can place items, you can take augments, you can take anomalies, you can put in good traits, and I don't know, there might be maybe more, but like the point is like everything you do is to give more stats to your units to help win your combats. Now there is a way to determine how to optimize, how to play around these things. Because in general, more stats is going to be like more damage or more tankiness. But it is important to know how to think about what you're going to do for each of these. Now, in general, the one of the core concepts, like the fundamental concepts for TFT, is that stats are going to multiply off of each other, and so having like the most important thing is to put the most stats onto your most important units. So in most situations, you are going to prioritize having 3 damage items on your main carry and 3 tank items on your main tank. Even if those aren't suboptimal, in almost all cases, it was going to be more valuable to put as many things on your most important unit as possible, because that'll give you the best chance of winning. Whereas if you were to spread your items, sure you might have like slightly better usage, but you are not benefiting off of the fact that you have all this other investment onto certain things. If you have a Tristana and an Urgot, and your main carry is Tristana, you aren't properly playing around the Urgot. He's just there. You already have good items for Tristana, but then you find like I don't know what's a good example here. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a bad example because they both do. Okay, scratch that example because they just do different things. But the point is, even if you're slamming like slightly suboptimal items, it is better to do that than to greed for the optimal items if you don't have the means to do so. If you don't have the components you need to make what you want, but you don't want to just lose, you should make something and then you can kind of figure it out. If you have like better replacements, you get enough removers now that you can just swap things as they make sense. If you have a like this is your Tristana, this is the Tristana you want to have. You find a good Tristana item, you can move like your last whisper to someone else. Or I don't know, like something that makes more sense. And then take your better thing, and you can slowly work towards your BIS item holder. But the point is, you want to make your unit as strong as possible with what you have. You don't have control over the components you're dropped. Sometimes you might get unlucky on carousel. It is best to just make 3 items for your main carry and your main tank. Like sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. It's better than to do that than to just have all your components on your bench unused because you don't have BIS and then you lose because you don't have the components that you want. At the very least, tank item Garen and 3 damage item Tristana will be very good. Whereas if you have a unit that could maybe use it better, like a Vladimir, oh he might use AP better, but you're not considering the fact that items work together. The main trait you're playing around is going to be like emissary. They're both watchers, but uh, Vladimir is not an emissary. He's getting the like. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a bad example because you get. But the point is, even though he would be a better user of this Crown Guard item, having 3 items on your main tank will make Garen much more tanky and with Vladimir to have the Crown Guard. Why is that? So, for tankiness, there are a couple of stats to consider. There is health, there is armor slash magic resist. There is durability, also known as damage reduction. And like these are the main ones, but there's also a couple other things like shields. Actually, I'm just gonna. There is regen. There is mana. Is there more? I guess there's a couple niche ones. All right. What else? I don't know. But the point is, you want to consider that units are going to have a combination of these to live as long as possible. Right, so another one's healing. Now, there's different ways to be tanky. You have more traditional tanks who might have a lot of regen and they might have a lot of health. But another example of a unit being really tanky is a unit that heals a lot and does a lot of damage. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Even though these items serve different purposes, these, if you look at the damage charts and look at the tankiness, you can see that these can last a very long. They can absorb a lot of damage, even though they do so in different forms. Uh, Doctor Mundo, he's traditionally a tank. He is absorbing a lot of damage through a lot of healing from his ability. Plus, he has tank itemization that reduces damage and health that makes it it takes more health, more damage to kill him. Whereas Urgot will have high health from his traits, but instead of reducing damage like Mundo does, and instead of healing from his ability, he's becoming tanky because he is healing from the damage that he does. And so what healing does is it helps him last longer, helps him live longer. Though there's a couple other things to. I don't know if I can like. I don't know. So I kind of like lied a little bit about how these work because What this actually means is that shield is effectively just health. Regen is effectively just health. Healing is just health. So when you take damage, you have a certain amount of health that you can take, and when you get to zero, your unit dies. This damage is reduced by armor and magic resist, and this is reduced by durability. However, shields and healing, uh, they aren't reducing the damage you take. They are increasing the amount of damage that you can take, which is effectively giving you health. If your unit shields, they have a shield for 1000 damage. This shield lasts for 4 seconds. You have a 4-second window where you could take 1000 damage and not have it lower your health. That's effectively how a shield works. You are gaining maximum health only for a certain duration. If the timer runs out and you didn't use all of that shield, you are essentially like you didn't like waste the. I don't know. Wait. If your shield breaks in that 4-second window, then that means that that your shield is broken. So you're now taking damage off of your actual health. But if it did not, after that 4-second window, you basically did not take any damage. Healing works in a similar manner, in that it adds back to your health the damage that you've already taken. If you have not taken any damage, healing is useless. But if you have taken damage, healing gives you some of your health back, so it effectively adds to the amount of damage you have taken. You have 1000 HP, and you take 400 damage, and then you're now at 600 damage. But you heal back to full. You have effectively made it so that now it took 1400 damage to take you down, because this 400 that was used to lower your health was negated by the fact that you're now at full health. So you now need an additional 1000 damage to take down your thing again, your unit. So each time you heal, you're just increasing the amount of health it would need to take you down, like to kill your unit. So even if your unit is constantly taking damage and you are constantly like having your health lowered, if you have enough healing, you can, in theory, scale your health infinitely by out healing the amount of damage you're taking, and effectively your health is never being lowered because you're healing so much. There's 2 different forms of healing. Actually, there's a couple. Okay. There's regen, which is just healing based on a certain amount over time. So the regen ratio is over here in Mundo's ability. He heals that amount over 2 seconds. So that number is determined that way. Another form of healing, or of regen, is through like something like redemption or Dragon Claw, or the amount of your healing is consistent and it scales off of, in this case, your max health. In this case, it is your missing health. Now, missing health and max health are not the same thing, because missing health is based on the damage you've already taken. No. if you're at 10,000 out of 1,000 versus 5,000 out of 1,000 or 10,000. In this instance, you have taken 9,000 damage. So you are heal like the number you're basing your thing off of is 9,000. You're healing. Whereas here, you have taken 5,000 damage. So the number you're healing off is 5,000. So that's just number. What's the number here? 15%. You're healing for 15% of this number. And you're healing for 15% of this number. And that's like what's 50, and this is like that. So missing health scales with how low you are, but it also scales with like specifically the amount of damage you've taken. So it doesn't matter what the percentage health you are at. What matters is just how much health you've lost. So the higher your max health and the high, like this is the number that it's basing it off of. That's how missing health works. But there's also, like in the Ergot example, there's healing from damage. I don't know how to like show this, but like Ergot, let's say his ability, he hits 3 units for like 600 damage. And he has okay, so he's doing 1800 total damage. And let's say he has 20% uh like Omnivamp. Right, whatever. So with the amount of damage he does and the amount of heal like Omnivamp he is healing for 300 from his ability, his like the damage he does. This healing is the same thing as this healing. It is just adding to your health. So this is 360 more damage that you Ergots can take because in this case it's because they did damage. So from dealing this damage, your Ergots can take this amount more to be killed. And then in extreme examples, you have Ergot that heals that does a ton of damage, and heals a lot, and you are effectively being tanky that way, even though you are not reducing damage by armor and magic resist as much. So I guess the better example is like you nah, okay. So that's how that's how healing works. Armor and magic resist. I off the top of my head I don't remember the formula. Like the okay. I think it's I'm just gonna okay. It is it's this. Right. It's the same formula for League that it is for TFT. It's a very common formula. But the point is, let's say you have 50 armor You're taking physical damage. If I compare it to something, okay, if you have 0 armor, you are taking just full damage, 100% of the damage that you would take. Let's say you're being dealt 1,000 damage. With 0 armor, you're taking 1,000 damage. With 50 armor, what you're taking is, yeah, I think the formula is, it's like 1 minus 100 over 100 plus your armor value. Which, this is 150, so this is 2/3. So you are taking, like, it should be eventually equal to, uh, you are taking 2/3 of the damage that it would have originally done. You're reducing damage by 33%. You are, I might have, like, this part might be wrong, but I know that this part is right. I don't know, ignore this. But the point is, you are reducing the damage you're taking, so in short, you are taking, like, so you can become more tanky by taking less damage through a formula. The way that the way that this formula, like, it works in that, like, the why this formula is chosen and, like, how these numbers come to be is that this formula is designed around, like 1 point of armor equals 1% more survival. Relative to 0. So if you have 50% more armor, if you have 50 armor, you are going to last 50% longer compared to a target that has 0 armor. And the math checks out because the amount of damage you've taken is 2/3. So you'd have to take an additional 500 damage in order to take the 1,000 damage that a unit with no armor would take. To contrast durability, it is just the percentage damage decreased. You have your damage is reduced by armor, and then it is reduced by durability. It is just, if you have 20% durability and damage reduction is the same thing. If you have 20 durability, you're just taking 20% less damage. This stacks. So your damage taken is being reduced by armor, and it is further being reduced by durability. So when you put these all together, you can have a very tanky unit. If you have a lot of durability, if you have a lot of armor, if you have a lot of health, either in the form of max health, like Warmogs. Warmogs just gives you 600 health. It takes 600 more health points to kill you, plus your maximum health is 600 more, plus the 12%. So, yeah, it takes that much more damage to kill you. But then there's also healing and shields and regen that adds to the amount of health you have. And all of that is being multiplied by armor, magic resist, durability. Now, there's a couple other tankiness uh, examples. Uh, Another one is mana, which is the ability to cast your spell. Your ability to cast your spell just determines your access to whatever the spell is. So, how frequently you can heal, how frequently Garen can shield, how frequently Urgot can do damage, which helps his healing. And then the last one is just aggro drop, which is effectively it's just a second chance. It's like a niche tankiness example, but in cases where you are going to die, or not necessarily die, but your unit can last longer if they aggro drop. Uh, they go from taking damage to taking no damage up until something targets them again. But the point is, if you start taking zero damage because you're not being targeted anymore, then that can make you last longer. That's like a niche example. So with all of the stats that you have, if you have like a really stacked unit, they will last a very long time. It'll take a lot of damage to kill them. Now on the damage side, we have AD slash AP. We have attack speed. We have crit. We have damage amp. We have mana. What else do we have? We have like random like on hit effects or something. I don't know. But I'm just gonna like we're not gonna worry about that. Uh oh, yeah. There's Shred Sunder. We also have like targeting slash like uh amount of things hit. And this is like another like situation example. So AD and AP. So AD was reworked a while ago to just be percentage based. All your units have like their base stats. They have their base value. Uh, all units have 100% base AP, and then whatever their base attack damage is. And then the ratios of their spells are like related. So having like a Death Blade, which is 55% attack damage, is gonna take 55% of like this value, whatever like star level you are at, and then that's it. And then Death Blade also has like the damage amp. I mean, I guess damage amp just multiplies that further by the damage amp percent. So after you do your AD, you just multiply it by an additional 10% in this case. Another way to consider damage, or how does it, like, I guess in like a bad order, is crit. The way crit works is that all units have a base 40% crit damage and a base 25% chance. Because this is how much a crit does, uh, you have this chance to deal this amount of bonus damage. If you have 25% crit chance, then like innately, then that means you have effectively you have a 25% chance to do 40% damage, which is on average a 10% damage increase. With something like Infinity Edge, this damage is going to be applicable to your spells, which for a lot of units is a really big part of their damage. So as you increase your crit chance, you're getting more percent damage increase. With Infinity Edge, you go to 60 because Infinity Edge has 35% crit, 35% crit chance, and 35% AD, and this other effect. So plus 35, this goes to 60, which is a 24% damage increase. And it with this, you also have it so this is a 24 damage increase that applies to your spells. This is not none of this is including AD. This is just including crit chance. So if you just put an Infinity Edge on an AD unit, or not even like just you put Infinity Edge on a unit, you are increasing their attack damage like by 24%, and because of the abilities in crit strike, their abilities now also deal 24% increased damage. If you get to 100% crit, this just goes to 40% increase. Because that's how much crit damage you have. The more crit damage you have, the number that this multiplies with. So if you have like 50% crit damage, for instance, because one way you can get that is from having multiple Infinity Edges, or if you have Ambassador, you could increase your crit rate damage. But now that you have this is 50, then everything just changes a little bit. So instead of 10, this is 12.5. And having 60% crit damage at a 60% chance is a 30% damage increase. And then this is a 50% damage increase. So you have that, and you compare that to. I'm gonna change this back, but you have items like Deathblade, which is 55, 80, 10% amp. Then you have IE, which is 35, 80, 35 crit. The amount you're increasing your damage by is just 55. So like let's say you're doing 1000 damage. With your AD, it is times, like, it's 1.55. And then plus your damage amp, 1.1. And this I don't feel like doing off the top of my head. I mean, that's not the hard. It's like what the one six. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about it. It's like 1700, 1705. And then here, 1.35 times, and then the way, because crit is like here with you have 30% crits, so you have 60% total crit damage. So that it's basically having the same thing as damage amp. Which is this number. So obviously these numbers are pretty close, but Deathblade is a little bit more favored. Like even on ability damage. However, there's a couple other things to talk about as to why in some cases Infinity Edge would just be better. In some cases Deathblade would be better. Like looking at just the math and like no like context, it looks like Deathblade is just better. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Another way to amplify damage is with attack speed. Attack speed has two different effects. It increases the auto attack damage, and it increases the frequency at which you are going to cast your spell because you are generating mana faster. Auto attacks generates 5 mana for auto, or not mana, 5, 10. If you have more attacks per second, you are going to gain more mana. The way attack speed works is the same as in League. And this is also pretty simple. It basically, I don't even think I need to do anything here, but like, every unit has an attack speed ratio, and this is the effectiveness of how attack speed is applied to them. So, whereas in League, there's an attack speed, a base attack speed ratio, and then there's like two different numbers in League, so it's a little inconsistent. But in TFT, every unit their attack speed ratio is just used as like the same. So effectively, with a Mumu's like 0.6 attack speed, and you were to build like let's just do a Gnasher's Tooth, but like let's just do it like this. 10% flat plus 60% on the ability. Let's say you casted your ability, so you have 70% attack speed. So without any bonus attack speed, Amumu is uh Amumu is using or doing 0.6 attacks per second. With 70% attack speed, you're now doing 1.02 attacks per second. and then that's it. All sources of attack speed add together. All sources of AD add together. Crits add together. Damage amp adds together. So if you were to get like this Nashor's plus like I don't know what's a item that you could take with Nashor's like Guard Breaker. You have 70 plus 20. And in this case, it just adds together, so you just have 90. It's all sorts of attack speed, AD, AP, crit, damage imp. Uh, it all adds together. And then the way your damage is going to be, I mean, so the attack speed is calculated into your damage, and that it increases the frequency of your autos. So having more attack speed means you have more autos, which means more mana, more spells, and that's more damage. Actually, I'm a little unsure because in League it's actually more complicated. Yeah, okay, you know that's. I mean, okay, I just trust that it's the same in League because League has like. Because I'm pretty sure in my, I'm not sure if it follows the way I just described, or if it follows the League formula. No, wait, no, it's just the same thing. What am I thinking? Oh, it's because what I'm thinking of is that in League they have. Okay, no, never mind, never mind. It's what I said. So more mana means more casting, and that means more damage. Another source of damage is mana. Uh, specifically like mana, like just in general, but like you have like Shojin, which gives you 5 bonus mana per auto. So instead of 10, it's 15, which effectively means 50% more. Or, yeah, like it just makes it so that you cast more, which is that's what Shojin does. But you are changing this number because you can also change this number through like Visionary or Nami Emissary bonus, and then this number changes, and then that determines how many attacks you need to cast. And for all these champions, their cast does a good amount of damage. For a lot of units, their cast is most of, if not all their damage. Like, I feel like if Powder, for instance, is not casting, she's pretty much useless. So, yeah. Another source to increase damage is Shred Sunder. What Shred and Sunder does is it decreases this stats. It makes it so you have specifically less armor and magic resist. So it lowers the number on this end. So when you do damage, all your damage is multiplied by all the stuff that multiplies your damage, and then is reduced by all the stuff that reduces the target's damage. So with Shred and Sunder, you are reducing the amount of damage you are losing to their armor and magic resist. Shred and Sunder generally is percentage based. So, okay. If we go back to this somewhere here. Okay, this is the armor. But do they have the reduced? Yeah, because it works the same way in League and in TFT, except some of them are just not used. So I want to see where it says it here. I think this is what I'm looking for. Okay, so in League, there is 4 different ways to reduce armor. In TFT, it's the same way, except some of these just don't exist, and thus the order is a little confusing for people. So in League, there is armor reduction, like flat reduction. There is percentage reduction. There is armor pen, and then there's flat pen. So there's reduction, then there's pen, and then there's flats and percentages. In League of Legends, armor reduction, I can't think of off the top of my head. What reduces armor? Or what is flat armor reduction? Okay, here. Yeah, there's very, very few instances, but you have this flat reduction. This is applied first. Then is flat or percentage reduction, which is like Black Cleaver, for instance. That's the most like notable example. Then there's percentage penetration. So reduction is is like a debuff. You are reducing the armor of your opponent, and then penetration is for the user. You are doing damage as if the your target had less armor. So with reduction, you are like actually like lowering the armor of your enemy. Whereas penetration is as your damage is calculated as if your enemy has less armor than they actually do. And then for reduction, flat is first. For penetration, percentage is first. Penetration is catered towards the user, and reduction is catered towards the opponent. Uh, Percentage penetration in League is like these items, like Lord Domdor Guards or Cyrillas. Like, this is pen. as opposed to reduction, which is Black Cleaver. As a result, in League, if you have both, if you have someone has Black Cleaver and you have Pen, like you can't build both together. But if someone else applies Black Cleaver, someone with Pen can benefit from that because your damage is being reduced by both. And you can't build, like I said, you can't build both at the same time, but you can affect both. Black Cleaver is reducing it is just reducing their target's armor, and then your Pen, it takes that into account. So even though there's it looks like there's diminishing returns, it's better to have both than to have only one. Is the point. And then after percentage penetration is flat penetration, which is stuff like lethality and also magic penetration is the same thing. In TFT, some of these don't exist. So in TFT, I don't think there's any flat penetration, and I don't think there's any percent. I think there's just no penetration at all. There's just reduction. As a result, people get confused as to why it's this way, but because these two don't exist in TFT, the order it's this. So it does flat first, and then it does percentage. Like a lot of people get really confused by that, but that's just because it is literally reducing the armor of the target, as opposed to penetration. And as for why this is the order that they do, it's a balancing thing. But the point is, in TFT, this is what is used. So this is why it is in that order. Like they're just taking the same thing as from League. This favors the targets because mathematically it would be better to do percentage and then flat. Like you would do more damage if it was percentage and then flats. Which is how it works for penetration. And like I said, this is for the user, so this is designed to make the user do as much damage as possible. Whereas this is for the recipient. This is just, I don't know. It just feels better for the tank if their armor was reduced by less. I don't know. It's complicated, but like in TFT, flat is first and then it's percentage. Now, you might be thinking, where do you get flat reduction? And there aren't many instances, but like for instance, you have like Caitlyn. She reduces their armor magic resist by 20. That's flat reduction. She reduces. It's not penetrating. It is a reduction. She reduces. And then you have like Blighting Jewel reduces their magic resist by 4. There's like maybe a couple other examples, but like that's where that comes from. And then this is like, okay, this is Sunder. What Sunder is, it is percentage reduction. Sunder reduce armor. It is not penetration. You are literally lowering the amount of armor that they have while they have like the reduction effect. So while they're being sundered, the target literally has less armor. Okay, so the other things is like targeting / amount of the units hit. This is just like you have Nami. Nami does this amount of damage. This looks low, but she hits 3 times. She hits 3 enemies. So this is like times 3. Zoe, same thing. Low damage, but she hits a bunch of times. Silco, low number, but You have four different things that each do 5 times, so it's actually times 20. And then you have situations like AoE, where sometimes you just hit more units. If you have like Darius, or I guess like even like Urgot, uh, he hits in a one hex AoE. If he hits more units, he does more damage. It's as simple as that. And then other effects, it's just stuff like, let's just say, like static shiv, proc damage, sunfire cape, uh, like this like item damage. You have like stuff like Kog'Maw, which has like on hit damage. You have stuff like some traits do damage, like MS or not like Automata. Like you have this uh artillerist, this rockets does damage. Like there's other things to consider. But we're not gonna like worry about those too much. So when you deal damage, you have to consider all of these things, and on each target, you have to consider all of these things as for how everything plays out. So now comes the argument as to how do you determine which items, because I'm focusing on items and I guess augments slash anomalies by extension. How do you get the stats to do the most damage? We saw from the previous example, Deathblade does but more than IE. So when do you want to get IE if Deathblade is just better? Well, one, if you don't have two swords, you can't make Deathblade. It is easier to get a sword and a glove than it is to get two swords. However, this damage increase is also very small. It's a little complicated. So when you start factoring all of these things together and all these things together, you start to realize that mathematically you are favored to do certain things over others. If you have 50 AD, I mean, you just have 50 AD. If you have 50 AD, 35% crit, 20% amp, you're doing like, I don't know, or that's changed it. You plus 35% crits, you're at 60%. Equals 223% more damage. And this is for like, this is based on like all the spells ratio, whatever. So like, you also have the base damage of your spell. You have this number, for instance. They also have an AP ratio, which also scales in the same way. So you take 300% of your AD plus 50% of your AP. So the way Urgot's spell is calculated is it takes, what's his base AD? Let's say you have a Urgot 2, 75% base damage, and then you're increasing his AD by 50%. So 75 times 1.5 is, I mean, it's this. So basically, by having 50% AD, you're basically doing the damage of a 3-star Urgot at 2-star. But whatever. You have a 2-star with 50% AD. It's this number. That number goes into this. And then this is just, let's just say you have like 100 AP, because you just, a baseline, every unit has 100% AP. So that's 113 times 300, or 300%, which is 339 plus 50. That's 389. That number gets multiplied by crit, damage amp. Remember, crit is effectively damage amp, but it's counted separately. So when you have multiple sources of amp and crits and AD, it all adds together. So if you have like, say 20 plus 15 plus 15 AD gets a 50. You have 25 plus 35% crits, get to 60. You have 10 plus like 10, get to 20. And then this number times the crit damage, 0.4, 24% bonus damage. So you have your 389 number from like the other thing before I got distracted, times the damage from crits. Okay, and okay, the way crit works is that either you crit or you don't. So it's not like you're getting a flat 24. It's on average 24% damage amp, but either you're getting 0 or 40. So you have a 60% chance to do 40 and a 40% chance to do 0% bonus damage. So I'll because it's multiplying together. I'll do it last, but 389 times 1.2. So this is including the damage amp. You're doing 46 or 467 damage. And then if you crit, that'll deal an additional bit of damage. And you do this amount of damage. On average, the damage increases this much. So now it comes to the point where, how do you determine what stat you want? Which is kind of the point I've been dodging around. Let's say you have 50 AD. Now you have the opportunity to get 50% more AD or 50% damage amp. Which would be better? the correct answer is the 50% damage up. But why? It's like if this is a 50% damage increase and this is another 50% damage increase, and then this is a 50% damage increase, shouldn't this be the same? Yes, but no, because of how it adds up together. If you have 50% AD and you add another 50 plus 50, you're now at 100 AD, which is a 100% damage increase. If you have 50 AD and you plus 50 amp, you add 50 amp, you are not getting 100 AD. Because these numbers multiply together. You're actually getting 125% more damage. And where this number comes from is you have your base damage plus your AD and then this number is being multiplied by amp. And that's where this comes from. So when you stack multiple of the same sources, you are effectively getting less value than from adding multiple sources, assuming similar values. So like I said before in the faded example, there's a certain point where more AD is gonna be better than like certain amp because the way it's balanced, the way the game is balanced, some things are easier to come by than others. So what if this was 180 or 50% amp? Now things are a bit different because this is now 100, so you are doing 150% more damage. At some point, the number, like the trade-off is going to be, no, like it's going to be worth doing. Like you just have to know what's going to do more damage. And in-game, it's going to be a little hard to tell. When things get more complicated mathematically, like pro players aren't doing the math in their head. Some people will do the math outside of the game and just memorize that and just know, oh, this is more damage. But in general, the core concept is more sources of damage increase equals more damage. Assuming the numbers are like similar. If you have an extreme example where you just have way more of a stat, sometimes it'll be more than having another stat. Because if you have like a ton of AD, or you have less of something, but you can have amp, you can have crit, you can have attack speed, all these stats, because they're multiplying together, will generally get you more damage than if you were to separately like just have like all in on one. Now if you look at the traits of certain units, they all give certain stats. If you look at Emissary, for instance, Emissaries gets this 20% damage amp, and with Tristana, they get attack speed. Artillerists gain AD. Ambushers gain crit strike chance and crit damage. Because of this, you want to play around adding damage sources that you don't have. At a certain point, some numbers will be too big that it'll like you can't really trade off. But like most of these items are generally balanced around each other and the stats that they provide, so you're not gonna have crazy differences. Giant Slayer has 25% AD and up to 25% damage amp. And it has attack speed. Like you have like all these items are meant to be comparable to each other. So you want to cater towards the unit, but like assuming that these are balanced, which I mean, in some cases they're not, but in general, you want to try to add more of the same thing. Like assuming these all provide similar values, like similar numbers. Like for okay, you have 25% AD, 25% amp, 10% attack speed, which is like 60 total numbers together. Whereas this is like 65 total numbers, and then this is like 70 total numbers, but then there's like and this is like 50 total numbers or something. Like but you can assume that they're providing similar values. You just have to understand that in a different context, certain things are more valuable. On a unit like Caitlyn, for instance, Caitlyn has Sniper and Enforcer as a trait. Enforcer gives her percent damage amp. Sniper also gives her damage amp. I mean, I'm not actually sure how Sniper works in relation to damage amp. It might just be a separate stat to like compare to damage amp. Because when you look at the tooltip, it doesn't like contribute to damage. It might just be a separate stat, in which case Sniper might just be going. But okay, assuming that Sniper is just damage amp, which it might not be, like I said, but assuming that it is, both of her traits give her damage amp, meaning she already has a lot of it. So in reality, in truth, you don't really want to add more damage amp because if you're going from like 60% damage amp to where's the thing I'm looking for? To 90% amp. That's not really the same as having 60% amp to like even though you're increasing the numbers, because these multiply together, you're actually getting more. That's the better. It's the same thing as this example. So even though you're adding like a similar like thing, you're getting more value by adding more sources because all these like the more numbers you're multiplying together, the more damage you're gonna do. Assuming that the numbers are like reasonable. If this is like something crazy, or I guess something like comparable, it's 110. But notice how you need like a lot more amp than a little bit of AD to have like the same kind of damage increase. So in general, it is easier to get 30 AD than it is to get 50% amp. So as a result, you want to prioritize having access to as many unique sources of damage as possible, because that's what will increase your damage the most. So on Caitlyn, you don't want to look for damage amp. You want to look for stuff that gives her AD and crit, because she does not have a source of AD or crit. As a result, the AD that she is getting will be much higher because of all the damage amp she already has, and the crit that she will be getting will also do the same. It'll increase her damage as like much more because she doesn't have a source of crit. If you take a unit like Camille, her traits give her crit damage, and it gives her percent like damage amp. So now you have two sources, and they're kind of balanced. What Camille doesn't have a source of is AD. So you really want to prioritize giving her a source of AD. And of course, so like it's fine to give other things to Camille as well. It's just the most important stat is gonna be stuff that you don't already have. So like obviously like the arguments between BT and Hodge, like BT is a better defensive item, but Hodge gives crit and it gives more damage. People generally prefer Hodge because of that. And it's fine. Even though she already has crit, having more crit is fine. Yeah. And having more damage amp is fine. You just need to make sure you have sources of other things for it to work. If you take a Twitch's trait gives him experiment, which is like hard to quantify. His experiment bonus scales with attack speed. It doesn't scale with anything else. This doesn't crit. I don't think it works with amp. It might work with amp. I don't think it works with sniper. Which I mean I don't know if it works with amp or not. I shouldn't. But it doesn't work with AD either. It only scales with attack speed. And then his other trait gives him let's amp. Percent damage. What he doesn't have is AD. What he doesn't have is crit. Yeah. So why is it then that Twitch likes to build stuff like this? Or you're not built like why is it that more often you don't see like double damage? You just see like a lot of attack speed. It's because some things are a bit more impactful than others. Gintius is a unique example because the more attack speed you have, the more attack speed you're gonna get. The faster you proc this, and then this multiplies your damage. So over the course of combat, you are getting increasingly more damage because you are attacking faster. Up until a cap, you have the attack speed cap at 5%, 5 attack speed. At which point you are no longer gaining any damage. However, the difference between you getting there and you at the start of combat is much larger than almost any other item. Additionally, Twitch has synergy with attack speed because of the experiment trait. As a result, there is a good reason to build a lot of attack speed. However, it is very important to build damage as well, because otherwise you are missing both on AD and crit. You don't have either of those in your kit. Meaning, if you don't try to tap into them, then that's like wasted damage opportunity. So people say it's like the mixing traits is not mixing traits is diminishing returns. I would argue that not mixing traits is losing out on opportunity cost. You have the opportunity to get all these other stats for free, like really easily. As a result, when you have something like Deathblade or Infinity Edge, where like they do similar things, but Deathblade gives damage amp, and Infinity Edge is crit. Being able to crit is pretty good for Quick Twitch. It gives both crit and AD, neither which Twitch has. Whereas this has damage amp, which Twitch already has a little bit of. So in the previous example, like from a while ago, where I compared Deathblade and Infinity Edge, we saw that Deathblade goes on top, but if you take into account that Twitch has Sniper, let's just say he has 2 Sniper, he gets 28% damage amp. He already has 28% damage amp. And nothing else. So DB equals so adding the values of these items. I should say amp. I should say damage. So when you calculate damage with DB, you have your base damage plus your AD this is multiplied by your damage amp. So you're doing 1 plus 0.28 plus 0.1. And that is equal to .13. Whereas with crits, what you're doing is 1 plus 0.35 times 1 plus 0.28 and then this is 1 plus 0.24. So this is AD crit amp. Whereas this is AD amp amp. And this number is now we noticed that last time Deathblade did more damage and it just looked like it was just better. But in this instance, because he already has amp, Twitch actually does more damage on average with IE. I mean, crit is like either crit or you don't, but on average, you're doing slightly more damage. As a result, people tend to favor Infinity Edge over Deathblade. And there is a breakpoint where it would still be better to do one over the other. Let's say this was 60 80. Now suddenly it gets a little bit more skewed. Now suddenly Deathblade is clearly favored. So there's a point in time where even though he already has amp, some things just add up to more. So what people who like to do math and theory crafters and some pros like to do is they like to figure it out. Assuming things are balanced and fine. And you're never really going to, like, unless you're doing the math as you go, as long as you're calculating the damage, like every single time you have a chance to make a decision, like then maybe you can always make the correct decision, but in general you're not going to be able to do that. So it's good to just understand how to plan around what you can do. So as we saw in the Twitch example, uh playing around the stats that he doesn't have is slightly favored over the ones that he does. Take a different example. You have Silco. Silco gets a lot of AP from Dominator trait. As a result, most people will play around things that he doesn't have. Mana, attack speed, and then this is uh, just another source. This is crit. He doesn't have crit. Another option could be damage amp. Another option could be something that gives both. However, without spell crits, this is not kind of wasted. However, this is still damage amp. It's still pretty good. Sometimes you want to all in on some things because the stat difference is too extreme. You're not getting crit or damage amp here, but instead you're getting more mana. And on Silco specifically, this is a pretty important breakpoint because you're getting from the two Shojins, you're getting 20 mana per auto, which means you only need 4 autos to cast. As opposed to with just the one, you need 6 autos to cast. Or 5.3. You need like 5.3 autos to cast. Which is not consistent. If you cast more, like the difference between 5 autos and 4 autos is effectively 20% more damage. Like if you cast like 20% more often, or 25% more often, you are effectively doing 25% more damage. Now, a lot of people think it is wasted to put something like Archangels on Silco because he already has a lot of AP from Dominator. If you take a large number, you have like 200 AP, and you add another large number, it's much less valuable than to prioritize other stats, but then for other units that don't have this amount of AP, having a source of AP is really good. Like having like I don't know I don't know what I wanted to do here, but having all this AP on someone like Heimer, who doesn't have a large source of AP, he has damage amp from Academy, and he has mana generation from Visionary. Having the AP is much more valuable on Heimer than it is on Silco because like he has less of a stat that he can multiply. Silco, uh, having more AP is just adding to itself. So as a result, it's you're multiplying less. And it's not to say that Archangels is bad if you don't have a third item for Silco. But if you made it an Archangels, you'd probably be more likely to lean towards Heimerdinger than you would to be towards Silco. Because Heimerdinger can use the AP better. Because Silco already has a lot of AP. And thus, Silco's damage is increasing by less than Heimerdinger's is from having this item. Now back to tanks. Tanks work the same way. Having multiple sources of resistances and damage reduction and stuff will make it a tank more tanky than uh otherwise would be. Like let's say you take a Nunu and you take 3 Warmogs versus a Nunu with some resistances. Well, let's just do this. If you're taking magic damage, having magic resistance versus having just health might make it that you take less damage. But another source, I mean, there isn't good sources of durability. But the point is, Bruiser provides a lot of health to. Okay, actually, Bruiser is a interesting example because it's percentage health. So actually, having more health, like having health, is pretty good. But you want to make sure that you have other traits as well. You don't want only health. Like, I guess I'll compare this to a different example, in a little bit. But you want to itemize to have like resistances as well, because if you don't have resistances, then you're still going to be taking more damage. In a case like Sentinels get a lot of. So okay, on Bruisers, having flat health is fine because it synergizes with their Bruiser traits, which multiplies the health that they have. So if they have more health, their amount that's being multiplied is higher. This is in contrast to something like Sentinels, where they have a flat amount of armor and it's pretty good, but having more armor isn't multiplying anything. It is just adding. You're adding more armor. As a result, building armor items on Sentinels is less effective than building armor items on Bruisers or on Watchers. However, building armor items on Sentinels will still decrease the amount of damage that they're taking. Just it'll do so by a lesser amount, a lesser percentage than it would for a Bruiser or a Watcher. Because of this, uh, you want to look for traits that stuff that multiplies with the armor that you have. You have a lot of armor, so what you want is you want more health, either through the form of max health or healing. Healing is just more max health over a period of time. Every 5 seconds, you get a certain amount of max health or something. If you shields, so she's gaining more temporary max health. This is in contrast to something like Hey, Vladimir. Vladimir is a Watcher. Watcher gives durability, meaning what Vladimir does not have is health or resistances. So, you want health and you want resistances. Now, Watchers are unique in the sense that durability is pretty hard to come by. So, itemization is a bit easier for them. But in this instance, you have a source of health, a source of resistances, and you have a source of durability, which will do a lot more for Vladimir than if you were to just all in on health. He has durability and he has health, but without resistances, you are reducing less damage. You will take less damage to be killed because you are missing out on a important source of damage reduction. So it is important not just to look at the traits, but also what the spell does. Vladimir's ability heals him. Healing is a form of health, meaning in Vlad's case specifically, he kind of has a source of health, and from Watcher he has a source of durability. So what you're looking for is something that reduces, like a source of armor. Like that would be more important than building more health or building durability. You have going back to Rel. Rel has armor and magic resist from Sentinel, and she has health from her shield. So while it's hard to build durability, that's what in theory would be optimal for her. If you have something like Steb. Steb has a lot of health, and his ability heals him, which gives him more health. As a result, Steb really, really wants some kind of resistances and some kind of durability more than building flat health. Because another interaction is that when you heal or shield, like having a certain amount of flat health, like this, okay, Bruiser specifically increases the max health, but if you heal for a certain amount, that isn't really synergizing with. I don't know. The comparison is treating healing and shielding as effectively the same. Shielding and healing on Sorrel is going to be much more valuable than on Steb because it doesn't scale with max health, whereas it does scale with resistances. Because Rel takes less damage, or because resistances make Rel take less damage, despite having less max health, if she heals for the same amount as Steb, the amount of damage that she can take will be greater because it takes like each the armor is making the damage she takes less. So if she gets plus 400 health from a shield, whereas Steb gets plus 400 health from a heal, Rel is the one becoming more tanky because the armored magic resist makes it so that the 400 health takes longer to lower again. So when itemizing your units, you want to pay attention to what their spell does and the traits that they have. Nunu's ability gives him durability, and his trait gives him health. So you want to prioritize armor and magic resistance. Alawi is a little bit unique in that she has durability from a spell, Rebel gives health, and Sentinel gives armor and magic resist. In comps where you are playing more around Sentinel than you are around Rebel, and healing is more important than on like okay, it's like you have Rebel Alawi, which has more health, and you have Sentinel Alawi, which has more armor and magic resist. Rebel Alawi, because they have health, they want that armor and magic resist more than they would on Sentinel. Whereas Sentinel, because it has a lot of armor and magic resist already, you want to prioritize health and healing and stuff. And obviously, like having a tank item on her, regardless of which comp she is going to be good. But if you were to play Gargoyle's Alawi, this Alawi would be a lot stronger in Rebel than it would be in Sentinel, because Rebel has more to multiply off of with Alawi than Sentinel does. As a Rebel Alawi, and I'm just gonna like a Rebel Alawi wants a bit more resistances, plus something that like yeah, so stuff that like amplifies like her stuff. A little bit of health from these two items. These are just good items, and then Stormplate is a little bit more valuable than it would be in Sentinel. Whereas if you were to play a Sentinel Alawi, you might look for I don't know, something like this. That said, if you have Sentinel Alawi and you don't have much option but to build like just armor items, it's fine. If you don't have a choice, this will make Alawi more tanky. And if you want Alawi to be tanky, then it is perfectly fine to build these items onto her, even though she already has a ton of armor and magic resist from her trait. But if you had to choose between adding a gargoyle and adding a warmogs, you should probably look towards the warmogs, because this multiplies better with the stuff that she already has. Adding 50 more armor when she already has 300, or when she already has 200, is a lot less valuable than adding more max health when she does not have a source of max health. So yeah. I think that's about it. Yeah. Just to reiterate, um, Sources of Sunder takes the highest percentage into account. So if you have an Urgot with Last Whisper, this is a 30% Sunder, and Urgot's ability is a 20% Sunder. Uh, the 30% will take priority. So basically, like it's not stacked. It doesn't stack together. It'll just only do the 30%. It's just because the number's higher. So because Last Whisper takes like procs on all physical damage, and Urgot's damage is all physical, basically having the Last Whisper on the Urgots, it just basically upgrades her. I mean, it upgrades his Sunder, but it doesn't like stack. So you're going from a 20% to a 30% damage or Sunder increase, which isn't all that much, which is why Sunder on Urgot isn't that high of a priority or something. Okay. Actually, okay. Another source of damage I didn't talk about is like random like bonus true damage, which is just another multiplier that separately synergizes with all of this stuff. Like this isn't damage amp, this isn't AD, this isn't crit. It's all skills with all of that. So if you have AD, damage amp, crit, attack speed, this bonus true damage is like separate. And then the other one is I'm not sure if sniper is amp or not because it doesn't show an amp increase, but it's the percent. Riot like they're supposed to have moved away from percentage damage increase and just changed it to amp, and then damage reduction to just durability. But I'm not sure if that applies in all instances. I don't know. But a couple other unique examples. Uh, Scrap. Uh, a lot of Scrap and like Dominator, I guess. They have really big shields. So if you want to make the shields more valuable, it makes having resistances or durability makes it so that let's say you have a 1,000 health shield. Having resistances will make it take more damage to reduce that shield than if you were to build health. Health does not synergize with shields, but resistances and durability do. So, and then the other example is having ratios. Garen has a unique interaction with health because his passive heals him for a percentage of his maximum health when he does damage, and his ability also has a maximum health ratio. As a result, health is even more valuable than they would be before. One, because his traits, I mean, Emissary gives a little bit of health, but not a lot. But also, if you have more things that scale with like a stat, it just gives you more reasons to have it. So with all that other stuff about health and how it interacts with resistances and durability, if you separately also have like ratios that scale, then that's just another incentive to have it. So in addition to multiplying with armor and magic resist and durability, it also multiplies with the amount you're healing. As a result, health is very good on Mirren. That said, should you go for 3 Warmogs or should you go for some resistances? It is, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the actual math is, but like, there is like, obviously, while health is important, too much and like completely missing out on something that he doesn't have might not be necessarily correct. Like, I think most people would agree that like a second Warmogs is probably good on him. But the third, like, do you go the third or do you go like a good resistance item? Like, like that's something that like a little iffy. It's hard to say. And everything, it just depends on the unit. And I'm not gonna focus on every unit because this whole point was just to talk about how all this stuff, like how to think about all this stuff. Another thing I want to say before I end here, this item's broken. Resumption is just broken. It gives okay stats, but it heals a large amount of health to a lot of units. It heals AOE, and it gives durability, which is pretty hard to come by. It doesn't stack, but it doesn't matter. You're not gonna have that many redemptions. But yeah, this item's broken. The list as many instances as possible. Okay, that's it. Hopefully that was enough. gonna call it because I am tired and my throat hurts. So those who are still here, thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.